September 15th, 1942. 3 torpedoes from a Japanese submarine tear into the USS Wasp. Within minutes, fires rage uncontrollably. Secondary explosions rip through the carrier. The crew fight to save her, but are unable to contain the resulting inferno. In a recent article, the National Interest makes a bold claim that USS Wasp was the worst aircraft carrier of World War II. Imposed design restrictions and technological limitations of the time undoubtedly fatally compromised her. But does she deserve the title of the worst aircraft carrier of the war? Having used all but 15,000 tons of the aircraft carrier tonnage allotted to the U.S. by the terms of the Washington Naval Treaty, the Wasp was designed specifically to consume this remaining tonnage. To maintain parity with Japan in terms of fleet carrier numbers, the Navy was unwilling to compromise on aircraft capacity, so it sought to fit a large air group onto a ship with nearly 25% less displacement than the Yorktown class. With only 3/4 of the tonnage available while maintaining a comparable sized air group, something had to give. If they reduced her speed, she would be unable to keep up with the fleet and would be relegated to convoy escort duties, so they made significant compromises in protection. As a result of Wasp's designers prioritizing aircraft capacity and speed while adhering to strict treaty displacement limits, she had minimal armor protection and, more importantly, no torpedo defense. Wasp had a number of innovative design features that helped to reduce weight even further. She was the first carrier fitted with deck-edge aircraft elevators and fitted with a light, compact power plant capable of producing 70,000 shaft horsepower. Despite having 50,000 fewer horsepower than the Yorktown, due to her lightness, she was only 3 knots slower, with a speed of 29 knots. Wasp was commissioned in April 1940 and was in the Atlantic when the U.S. entered the war in December 1941. Due to her recognized inherent design flaws, Wasp initially served in the Atlantic and Mediterranean, where Axis forces were perceived as less capable in naval warfare. With the loss of 2 fleet carriers after the battles of Midway and the Coral Sea, and another in dock for repairs, the U.S. Navy was left with just 2 operational carriers in the Pacific. When it was found that Japan had started building an airfield on the island of Guadalcanal, endangering the supply route to Australia, the situation became critical. The U.S. Navy had to take a chance on her. And by July, Wasp had made her way into the South Pacific. After assisting in the invasion of Guadalcanal in early August, she narrowly missed the Battle of the Eastern Solomons on August 24th due to being ordered south by Vice Admiral Fletcher to refuel. By the time she returned the next day, the IJN had moved out of range. The Enterprise suffered significant damage in this battle, and a week later, a submarine torpedoed the Saratoga, forcing her to return to Pearl Harbor for repairs. Throughout the first 2 weeks of September, the remaining 2 undamaged U.S. carriers, Wasp and Hornet, frequently operated southeast of Guadalcanal, providing cover for U.S. resupply efforts and ferrying aircraft to Guadalcanal to replace high aircraft losses at Henderson Field. In the early morning of September 15th, while providing air cover for transports carrying the 7th Marine Regiment to reinforce Guadalcanal, the convoy was spotted by a long-range reconnaissance float plane. Wildcats from the Wasp intercepted and shot down the float plane, but by then it had reported the carrier's location. Later that afternoon, at around 14:20, USS Wasp was heading into the wind to launch 26 aircraft and recover others from the previous patrol. The recovery of 11 aircraft was done, and the ship now veered 90 degrees to starboard back to her original course. A few minutes later, at 14:44, a lookout reported torpedoes off the starboard beam. Immediately, Wasp's captain ordered hard to starboard, but it was too late. 3 hit the forward section in quick succession. 1 left the water and struck just above the waterline. The other 2 struck close to gasoline tanks and magazines. The blast ruptured aviation fuel tanks and severed fuel lines. Fire broke out in the hangar and below decks. Heated by the furious gasoline fire, ready anti-aircraft ammunition blew up. Water lines needed to combat fire at the forward section had been rendered inoperable. Armed and fueled aircraft went up in flames, setting off ammunition, bombs, and gasoline in a deadly mix of horrific explosions. oil and gasoline poured in the sea, catching fire, making survival for those jumping overboard more difficult. Meanwhile, the other 3 torpedoes continued into the Hornet's escort screen 4 miles away. The destroyer USS O'Brien was hit in the bow, causing severe structural stresses throughout the ship's framework. Transiting back to Pearl Harbor, the O'Brien began to break apart after her crew had sailed her for 2,800 miles, and she sank on the 19th of October. All of her crew were rescued. America's newest and most powerful battleship, the North Carolina, was hit by a torpedo under turret number 1, causing the forward magazines to be flooded as a precaution. She developed a 15-degree list, which was corrected by counterflooding. When the captain asked the damage control officer for his assessment, he replied, "Sir, we have a hole in our bow big enough for me to drive a truck through." She had to be withdrawn back to Pearl Harbor for months of repair, which meant that she missed the most crucial period of the Guadalcanal campaign. Back on the Wasp, Captain Sherman ordered a slowdown to 10 knots and turned her to port so the wind would keep the fire forward. The water mains in the forward part of Wasp had been rendered inoperable, meaning that no water was available to fight the fire forward, and the flames continued to set off ammunition, bombs, and gasoline. The ready ammunition at the forward anti-aircraft guns on the starboard side was exploding, and fragments showered the forward part of Wasp. With the damage control teams unable to stop the spreading flames, and after consulting with his executive officer, Captain Sherman ordered abandon ship at 3:20 p.m. 193 men had died and 366 were wounded during the attack. As night fell, there were 4 violent explosions that engulfed the Wasp and the surrounding sea in flames. She went under bow first at 2100 hours. The after-battle report into the Wasp's sinking by 3 torpedoes launched by IJN's submarine WWII identified 3 major flaws that directly contributed to her loss: lack of armor, no torpedo protection, and poorly designed firefighting systems. Had she been designed with adequate torpedo protection, the initial impact would have been absorbed, limiting damage to the ship's vulnerable internal systems. Secondly, her aviation fuel storage tanks were not armored, so when the torpedoes hit, they ruptured, spewing fuel and vapor. This triggered an uncontrollable torrent of flames, which spread throughout the forward section of the ship, leading to her abandonment. While these 2 design flaws were caused by the strategic realities imposed by the Washington Naval Treaty, the third was not. Many interwar military ships, including the Wasp, lacked redundant fire suppression, had insufficient damage control, and antiquated firefighting systems. Given the intensity of the fire and the speed at which secondary explosions occurred, it is unlikely that a more advanced firefighting system could have prevented the catastrophe. One intriguing question is whether a Yorktown-class ship could have survived 3 near-simultaneous torpedo hits in such a vulnerable area. Following Wasp's loss, Hornet was the only U.S. aircraft carrier in the Pacific until she was joined by the Enterprise for the Battle of Santa Cruz on October 26, 1942. The Hornet sank, and the Enterprise was damaged in this battle, leaving the U.S. with no fleet carriers in the Pacific for the first time during the war. Fortunately, American shipyards, working around the clock, were already turning out more carriers that would take the place of those that had gone to the ocean's floor, leading to Japan's ultimate defeat. There are more great videos on my channel page. Check it out and press that bell icon so you don't miss the next video.